Okay. Hopefully, people have joined in on the session and they are able to hear me. My name is Gugujian, and we'd like to apologize to everyone for starting a bit later than it was expected for us to start from 11 a.m. This morning. But we are now going to start with the session. As the NYDA, we have arranged this session together with the National Student Financial Aid Scheme in order to address some of the challenges and issues regarding the challenges that young people or the youth of South Africa who are currently in school, who are currently in school doing their matric, or those who have finished their matric but they would like to apply for the NSFAS funding as to how can they be assisted for them to be able to get. So we'll have different speakers from the National Student Financial Aid Scheme whom are going to be speaking on this session. And also myself, I'm Gugujiane. I work for the National Youth Development Agency as the training specialist. So I will be facilitating the session and I will be calling in different speakers from the National Financial Aid Scheme to speak to different challenges that young people are experiencing regarding the NSFAS. So the panel members that we have in this session, we have Kaya, who's from the NSFAS, who's going to be talking to the application processes. We also have Ms. Christine Barth, also from NSFAS, and we also have Mr. Tilibali Mukondeleli, also will be talking about to the wallets and the allowances that are being given to students who are currently at the university level already. And we also have Ms. Prinika Nadlal. She will also be talking to the contracts of payment and any other matters regarding the outstanding fees that young people the challenges that young people might be having. So all this, then we will then at the end allow then for questions, and we'll take questions from students or any youth of South Africa or even parents who might be joining this session and be having questions that the panel members then will be able to answer those questions. Before wasting more time, I will then now hand over to Mr. Kaya to talk to how do young people who needs to be assisted for funding on NSFAS, how do they apply for NSFAS funding? Over to you, Mr. Kaya.
Morning, Goku, and thank you. And morning to everyone, including the viewers on your platform. As you have introduced me, I'm Kaya Ndima. I deal with applications of students who are intending to apply for NSFAS. So I'll take the colleagues through the process on how to apply for NSFAS and what top types of documents are needed for students to apply. I'm having to use this platform, but I see there's a button which says which directs me to present. I think I will be presenting my presentation using this uh, functionality. If you can allow me, Chair.
Yes, Mr. Ndima, you can go ahead and present the.
Thank you. You will tell me when you can see my screen, Chair.
Yes, we can see your screen now, Mr. Ndima. You can go ahead.
Thank you very much. Uh, Firstly, Chair, for people to apply for NSFAS, and I think it's important that we start with people who qualify and who qualifies for NSFAS. Uh, you need to be a South African citizen or a permanent resident of South Africa to be eligible to qualify for NSFAS. The documents that we need for one to apply, you need a copy, the applicant needs a copy of his ID or a birth certificate, or as well as parent ID copies and proof of income where applicable. And what is most important, Chair, they need to have their own email address and their own cell phone number. These cannot be shared among applicants. So you need to have your own unique cell phone number or your own unique email address. And also for people to qualify, they need to ensure that the household income combined is less than 350,000 or does not exceed 350,000. And NSFAS also assists students with students who are living with disability, and their household income should not exceed 600,000. So that is what is needed for a person to be eligible to apply for NSFAS. And for them to apply, these are the quick steps. One needs to create an account by entering the necessary information, which is the ID number that I have spoken about, as well as the email address and a cell phone number. Once they do that, they will receive an OTP to validate their profile. But what we have seen in the past, Chair, which I think it's important for students to know, is that once they create the MyNSFAS profile, they think that they have applied, which then is incorrect. They need to ensure that they create the MyNSFAS profile and also click on the apply button, which is that's when now they are submitting an application to NSFAS. And of course, they would need to upload the required supporting documents in order for their application to be complete. And once that is done, they will receive the reference number for them to be able to track and trace their application. So this is the immediately when when they go onto the NestFast website, then there is an option there that says apply for NSFAS funding. Once they click on that, it takes them onto this page, which is in front of you now. And then you would see on top there it says log in, create an account, forgot password. So if they already have an account, they click on log in, and then they will have to put in their ID number and password. And password, it and they need to be very careful with when they create their password, something that they will not easily forget and something that will not easily be copied by another user for them to be able to access their account. So if they have created the account, they go on to log in. But if not, then they will go on to create an account, and then they will start creating an account. So what is new that we have done for 2023 is that for the username, you may recall in the past that for username we have used email addresses, and what we picked up is that students tend to forget the email addresses because many of the students that we are dealing with are learners that are in matric, and some of them don't even have email. They have never been exposed to email addresses. So when they apply, it's the first time they are exposed to email addresses, and they just create whatever that they can think of as their email address, and now they tend to forget that. So what we have done for 2023 as a new change, we've then said we are not going to use the email address as the username. Would rather use an ID number, because we know a person can never forget his or her ID number. It's a unique number which you can always use. So we have now changed from an email address as the username to a student ID number. And immediately when they create that, they receive an OTP, which is then valid for an hour, for them to, every time when they log in, they will always receive that OTP via their cell phone number. So it's very important when they create an application, they must have their cell phones with them, because immediately when the system sends the OTP, it goes to the number which you have registered for them to be able to validate to activate the account. So once they create an account, they get to choose three security questions out of these security questions. The reason why we are doing that, Chair, you may recall last year we had an issue or a backlog of students who had to reset their password profile because they had forgotten their password. And that required a human intervention, which was then done by which was then done internally by an operations team. So we then said, let us not do that. Let us then, at the beginning of the application, we allow the student to create security questions. And if they, by any chance, tend to forget their password, then the system will ask them the three security questions which the student or an applicant would choose themselves. And then they would give the answers themselves, which are answers that they must not forget, because if they do that, then they will be creating problems for themselves. So this is what we have done new, which then we are hoping it's not going to create backlog like it did in the previous years. So this is what happens then, Chair. After they have created the profile, then the system would take them to this landing screen. And if you see here, it says welcome Tabo, apply now. So when they have created profile, they must not think that they have submitted an application up until they click on apply now, which then would take them to an application for them to fill in. So once they click that, it then takes them to this screen where now we are starting to make an application for the student. It's straightforward, Chair, because it's asking the student, are you currently studying, yes or no, and then they click on yes if they are currently studying. If they are not currently studying, then they would click on no. Then it would ask them highest academic qualification passed. Of course, if we are dealing with matriculants currently, their highest academic level achieved would be grade 11. So it would give them those options. They don't have to type in anything, but it gives them it gives them the options immediately when they click on whatever choice that they choose. And then it asks them, once they click, okay, because this is a screenshot, Chene, if a student clicks on no, then here the question here which says now currently, where are you currently studying, this would change to say, where are you intending to study next year, if they had clicked on no, because this is just a screenshot of the first page where we have selected yes. But in instances where they have selected no, then it would ask them, where are you intending to study next year? So of course, if they want to study at a TVET college, then it gives them three choices of TVET colleges in South Africa. And then if they've clicked on they intend to study at university, then they will have to choose three universities which they intend to study at. There is it, Chair. It's pretty way. It's just straightforward, the application, and then it goes to the demographic information. You select your race where you are applying from. If they are applying from NYDA, if they are applying online, then we get that information from there. And he also asked them the last high school, the last high school they attended, and the name of high school. So all the information is there, Chair. Then it takes them to the study information, which field of study they remember. You have chosen three universities, so we are also giving you at least three choices to choose from. And then the address information, which is where the student is currently residing, then they will put that information in there. And then at the end, it asks them if they want a laptop, and if they need a laptop, then they will choose from the 3 laptops. But they need to know that these laptops then would be deducted from their learning material allowance. They are not being given for free. So if one has a laptop and you feel that you don't need it, you're more than welcome to do that, because it simply means that nothing will be deducted from your learning material allowances. But if you don't have a laptop and you feel that you need one, then you're more than welcome to select one, and then it's going to be deducted from your learning material allowance. And then, Chair, based on the type of application which you have filled in, then the system would then tell you which documents are needed. We've got a SASA student. You know, a SASA student is a person whom is a SASA recipient. That person, we don't need any supporting documents because we know the person is a SASA recipient. And immediately when they submit an application and we verify the information with SASA and we pick up that the student is a SASA recipient, then that student will get a funding decision immediately. That student will be funded immediately. If the student is an F10, F10 is a student who is currently in matric this year, would be going to university for the first time. So those ones are called F10s. So if you are an F10, if you are a SASA F10, you get your funding decision immediately and you will be provisionally funded. But if you are a SASA returning student, a returning student is someone who is already at a university or a TVET college and who is applying for NSFAS, then that person would be they will also bypass other checks within NSFAS. Your financial checks, they will bypass them. Case management, they will bypass them, and then we will not fund that student immediately. However, we will take the student straight to academic eligibility checks, because we need to check if the student at university last year or at TVET, did the student pass? So we need to do that academic eligibility test. But they will, however, pass all other checks straight into academic eligibility checks. But if you are a student now with both parents and we have checked that information with Home Affairs, and we are happy that the people whom you have filled in on the form you said are your parents are indeed your parents, and we are happy with the information which we are getting from Home Affairs, you also bypass the evaluation process in case management. You go straight into financial eligibility checks, and there we are doing our checks with SARS. Hence, we are saying even if you do have a proof of income, even if you do or you don't, it's not a train smash. You can still submit it, because we would still get your income information from SARS based on the information which you have given us. But also, if you are a student living with disability, whether you are SASA or non-SASA, you still go through a process of evaluation which takes place in case management, where we then need to evaluate the disability annexure form. Because if you are a student who indicates that you are living with disability, we need a document called Disability Annexure A. That document must be it can be downloaded on our website. You take it to your doctor as an applicant, and then the doctor would fill in the information necessary, and then they will stamp it. And then that's what we need to check in order for us to determine whether you are whether you are a student living with disability or not. So that form is very important. Then the other important form, Chair, which I think it's important for the platform to know, there are students out there who claim that they do not know their parents. So such students who claim that they do not know their parents and they have legal guardian, we need a document called a legal guardianship document, or a court order, or a non-SASA declaration form. The legal guardianship document or court order, you can get it from court. But we realize that students, it's sometimes it's difficult for them to actually go and get these forms, and especially for us Africans, you know that if my brother has kids, and it happens that he pass away, then I will automatically take care of his kids without having to go to court. So that's what we've picked up. We then said, let us then introduce another form which is called a non-SASA declaration form, which then needs to be filled in by an applicant, by the person whom you are claiming as a legal guardian. And then you take that form to other your previous school principal or a social worker, because a social worker or school principal would know your situation at home, that you've been brought up by your aunt or by your uncle, so they should know that information. So that's where now I think we're having issues with students, because many of the applications which we could not complete for 2022 as students that could not provide us with that information. So those are the documents that we need, Chair. So it's very important that students take note of such documents. And then once the students submit and upload all the required documents, then they will receive the reference number, which they need to keep, because they would need to keep that and be able to track and their applications with that. So it's very important that they keep the reference number that they receive. And then, Chair, lastly, for 2023, we also introduced the NSFAS mobile app, which then helps in cases where there is load shedding. The system can still you can still apply on your phone. You download the app and you can still apply on your phone using that app, and you can be able to cancel the application as well. You do everything that you do on the web, but the advantage with the app is that it can work in an offline mode, to accommodate students in rural areas, because of connection problems and the limited internet services and all of that. So that is the other new thing which we have introduced as the entity for 2023. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you so much, Ms. Ndima, for that thorough briefing and the process of how to young people. I think was very useful, and you've covered most of the questions that, especially as the agents, we also receive a lot of questions at the NYTA from different students asking some of the things that you've mentioned here in terms of, especially in terms of the documentation that needs to be uploaded when young people are applying for NSFAS. And I think I remember also one young person came to our office sometime last year to say that I don't have a legal person, and the NSFAS, they've said to me when I was appealing, they said I must attach something called a legal guardianship. So I think you have put it clear now to say that what is the way forward for such young people. So thank you so much for the clarification. And I think also as the NYTA, if we can just maybe uh, have such information on our site shared with the agency, so that then we can be able to answer some of the questions that we get from the youth. And then to all those who are on the platform, from the NYDA side, I'll just want to raise some few things as well in terms of how NYDA, as Ms. Dendima has indicated, that applications are done online. So as the NYDA, we have centers also across the country, in district municipalities, in the cities, and especially also in the deep rural areas of South Africa and different municipalities across all South African provinces. And in those centers, we have some internet cafes where young people can also go there. If they want to apply for NSFAS, they can be able to get to use the internet there and apply for NSFAS. So I just wanted to make young people aware of that as well, to say that if they are unable to, maybe they don't have data to be able to apply, or they're experiencing challenges, they don't have access to internet, or they don't have access to smartphones or computers, they can be able to go to the NYDA offices and apply. The and then if they are having issues, then we can then be able to direct them to NSFAS at the moment. I know that in the previous years as well, we used to have some assistance from NSFAS, where we'll have graduates who also assist young people. But for this financial, for 2023 applications, we're still in the process of ensuring that that process as well is put in place so that young people can get direct assistance from young people who have been trained by NSFAS and who knows exactly how to assist young people. But at the moment, if they need access to internet and they need any other assistance in terms of applying, we do have materials and we do have computers and we have connection in all our centers. And our centers, if they want to know exactly where NYDA is based, they can be able to go to the National Youth Development Agency website, which is www.nyda.gov.za. And then under contacts on the homepage, they will be able to see where our centers are. The addresses are there, even their contact numbers. If they need directions to get to our centers, they will be able to access them from our website. So from my side as well, I wanted to raise that. I will now hand over to Miss Christine to speak to approvals and rejection of statuses for those maybe they will be rejected, and also those who are approved as to what is the process then going forward for those students. Thank you so much, and over to you, Christine.
Morning.
Morning, ma'am.
My apologies. Sorry, I actually got thrown out of the studio, and I've only just entered Gugu. Apologies. I didn't quite hear what you said, and I just, if you can repeat quickly so that I don't miss what you need me to answer.
Okay. Christine, would like you to just present in terms of approval and rejection statuses of the students that might have been approved or those who might have been rejected, as to what would be the reasons for them to be rejected. And for those who are approved, what is then the way forward for them after they've got the status that they have now been approved.
All right. Thank you,
By
Gugu, and
NSFAS.
apologies.
Yes.
Apologies for making you repeat yourself. If you can just confirm that you can see my
No
screen.
problem. Okay, we'll confirm.
And Gugu, if it doesn't load, then maybe I'll just talk through it, see.
It's loading. It's going to come now.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
it's there.
while
Thank you.
yeah, is it there? All right.
Yes.
So Gugu, sorry, the brief that was given to me that I was only going to speak through rejection reasons. But so before I do that, I did hear you also asking for information about the other normal processing phases. And so the first thing that we need to be clear on is that NSFAS has just recently built a new application system. This is what Kaya actually presented to you. And so the system isn't entirely completely built. It's been built in a particular way. They call it most viable product phases. So in other words, they're building it for us piecemeal as we go through the processes. And so unfortunately, we're not entirely able to provide you the exact wording that will be on screen for a student. We have, as operations, we have obviously indicated to the software developer, this is what we want. But sometimes one is surprised by the product that you get. But in general, what you should be seeing in terms of submitting an application, if you are a new applicant, so in other words, you were not funded in the previous year, you should be seeing that once you have submitted your application, the status of the application will read application submitted. There is an instance in which your application on submission will immediately move to a status of provisionally funded. And this is if we find that you are what we call a first-time entering or a first-time funded student. First-time entering means that you have never been in the higher education sector, so you've never gone to a public university before. First-time funded means that you have never been funded by by NSFAS for studies at TVET College. And the way we determine this also is, of course, if you are currently, so in the year of 2022, you are registered as a matriculant and you're a SASSA student. So if you're a first-time entering student or a first-time funded student and you are a SASSA beneficiary and you are registered with DBE as being or going to write your matric exams in 2022, you will then get an immediate, what we call immediate provisional funding decision. But generally, a lot of people will see the application goes into a status of application submitted. And just to quickly answer to the question I did see on the chat, in terms of why is it stuck there right now? Unfortunately, the system hasn't been, as I indicated, hasn't been built to completion yet. And so hopefully by next year, you should see the processing happen a lot faster. But currently, the system, the next step hasn't been deployed into our production environment yet. But the next step would be one of three steps. The next step will either be you going to go into a status of evaluation or awaiting evaluation. And at that point, Kaya and his team, they need to evaluate your application. This has largely got to do with instances where the applicant has indicated to us that they have a parent and we are not able to confirm that parent against the DHA system, or we're finding that you've indicated that you've got a legal guardian and that person is, we're not able to verify it against the DHA system, or you are married and the DHA system doesn't indicate it as yet you are married. And when you are applying and this happens, the system is supposed to automatically go to DHA when you type in your parents' information and say, is there a parental relationship between the applicant and this parent? And DHA's data will then give us an indication as to whether or not it is. And if it's not able to confirm that, the system is supposed to ask you for additional documentation. So, for example, you say you've got a guardian, we're not able to confirm it on DHA, we're going to ask you for supporting documentation. If you say you're married, but DHA doesn't know that you're married, we're going to ask you for the national ID of your husband, wife, and we're going to ask you for the documentation as well. And then, of course, and I think Kaya did touch on this, we have the applicants who are not able to provide their parental information. They're not married, they don't have a guardian, they're not able to provide parental declaration. So we're not able to find you on the SASSA database. You're saying to us, you have no mum, you have no dad. And so because we know that you should exist on the SASSA database, we then ask you to fill out the non-SASSA declaration form. Of course, if you're under the age of 18, it's a different form. It's called a vulnerable child form. And so all of these forms in all of these kinds of exceptions, they are actually reviewed by a team of human beings. It is not an automated process. And they actually go through that documentation and make sure that we have sufficient documentation in order to be able to justify to AGSA that if we funded you, that we have enough evidence to prove or to substantiate the fact that you said that you have no parents, that kind of thing. So the one status your application will go into is awaiting evaluation. Either after awaiting evaluation or directly from application submitted, you will go into a status of assessing financial eligibility. And assessing financial eligibility means that, well, firstly, you're not a SASSA beneficiary because you would have skipped straight through that if you were a SASSA beneficiary. And it means that what we're doing at that point in time is we're actually going to SARS and we're asking SARS for all the information for the last tax season for your parents and or spouse and or guardian. And this is in order to determine whether or not your household income is in fact under the 350,000 Rand threshold for students that don't live with disabilities, or 600,000 Rand for students who do live with disabilities. Of course, not everybody's parents are on SARS, right? We know that. I mean, NSFAS is funding poor people by and large, And so there are instances, of course, where SARS will say to us, no, sorry, this person is not a registered tax payer. And our next step at that point in time is to look at the amount of money that you indicated these people are earning and yourself is earning on the application form. And if we find that your declared income, that's what we call it at NSFAS, is below the threshold, we then also do a credit bureau check. We are well aware that credit bureau checks can sometimes be inflated. And for that reason, when it comes to financial eligibility rejection reasons, whether it is from SARS, your declared income and or your credit bureau check, we allow you to come back to NSFAS and to provide evidence that the information that we have received doesn't correctly reflect your household income. And I'll talk more to that when I speak to the rejection reasons. Once you're through financial eligibility, you move into a status of awaiting academic eligibility. And sorry, just to go back to the financial eligibility, of course, we're waiting for SARS to have their data ready before we can engage in financial eligibility check. And as you're aware, the SARS window only closed, I think, last week. And we need to give them a moment just to go through all of their SARS, all the income tax submissions that have been made. And once they are done with that, they will then provide data to us so that we can actually perform the financial eligibility checks. So even if the system was entirely ready at this point, you would in all likelihood sit at a status of awaiting financial eligibility test because we're waiting for SARS to provide us with the data. Once financial eligibility checking has been done, off you go to the status of awaiting academic eligibility. This is more difficult. Remember, I started off about the first time funded, first time entering. Of course, if you're one of those students, you don't actually get stuck at the status. But in terms of for many students who are not, or applicants who are not currently writing their matric exams, there's a chance that you've already been in the system. And we need to make sure that you are academically eligible. And there's two aspects to that. The first is that if you're a continuing student, we're going to check to make sure that you've met the academic eligibility criteria. So there's in our funding guidelines, there's a grid that actually explains that if you registered on X number of modules, subjects, or courses in higher education, you then need to pass X number of modules, courses, or subjects in order to continue getting funding. If you're in the TVET sector, there's very clear guidelines there as well about particular types of courses. You need to achieve a particular level of pass rate. And we actually obtain that data from the Department of Higher Education and Training. Again, so you're hearing there's a dependency there on data. So of course we can't run academic eligibility testing for anybody who they then share it with us. So there might be a delay when you get to academic eligibility testing. Testing is the N+ rule. And in order to be funded at NSFAS, an applicant, whether you're a continuing student or a new applicant, you need to be N+ rule compliant in both sectors. So you may not have exceeded, or you must be compliant with the university N+ rule, and you must be compliant with the TVET N+ rule. In the past, what we found is that students will spend a long time in higher ed, for example, waste a lot of the state's money, and then when they can no longer study in higher ed because they've spent so much time there, they would then revert to TVET and wash, rinse, repeat, and do the same thing there. So by now, we're requiring that you must be compliant in both sectors. And the N+ rule, just to give it a quick overview, it has 3 components to it. When you're applying, only 2 of those apply. The first is that you should not have already achieved the highest level of qualification that NSFAS funds at. So the highest level of qualification that we fund at is on an undergraduate level, and that answers one of your attendees' questions as well, where they were asking, do we fund postgraduates? No, we no longer fund postgraduates. So if you've already achieved an undergraduate qualification, unfortunately, you get rejected. We also check to make sure if you're in the TVET sector, because there's very clear rules that have been set out in the TVET sector about what it is a student should be doing in terms of moving from Report 191 level 123 to 456, and moving between the NCVs, and even within the NCVs, moving around from one subject stream to the other stream. So if you've broken any of those rules, of course, you're going to be rejected. But if you're found to be academically eligible, you are now through the gates and you will get a provisional funding decision. And that provisional funding decision means that if you are able to register at any one of our public higher education institutions, so in other words, a TVET college or a university, and you register on a qualification that is funded by NSFAS, we will then fund you for that qualification. So that speaks to the normal processing flow. In terms of our rejection reasons, our expectation is that we're going to possibly see 3 different kinds of processing rejection reasons. The first one is applicant is deceased. This is where somebody is, generally we find, this is where somebody is trying to apply for somebody else, and is trying to defraud the system. However, we have also found instances in which, in fact, the person is still very much alive, and there's a problem on the DHA system. Unfortunately, this is not something that you can appeal, but what you are able to do is you're able to go to the Department of Home Affairs and you're able to ask them to correct the error on their system. And of course, once it's been corrected, then NSFAS is able to review your application again. Application received after closing date. This error message may or may not pitch up. We have found in the past that applicants would be able to sneak in behind the closing date and submit an application to NSFAS. And we've got an audit trail in place. And so if we see that it's come after the closing date, we would then actually reject the application. And I think everybody needs to keep in mind that NSFAS is a public entity, and that we very much need to be able to prove to AGSA that what we do is done according to all the rules stipulated. And so if your application reaches us late, we unfortunately do need to reject your application. The people who are applying from their mobile phones and who are outside of network environments and who are not, the application that you've made has not been submitted yet, must be very careful about ensuring that they submit that application before the closing date. DHA error? Yes.
Christine?
Yes.
Can I just alert you that if we can just take another 2 minutes, because we still have others that needs to,
Sure.
other points that, yeah.
Okay,
Thank you.
All right. DHA error means that when we tried to verify you against DHA, we weren't able to find you. Missing supporting documents is that instance where you haven't provided the vulnerable child or the non-SASSA declaration form. Not eligible for NSFAS funding is when you're being funded by another funder. Income greater than 350K or greater than 600K. Those reasons you may actually appeal, as I indicated earlier on. Change from NCV report 191 in academic career, change in program in academic career, and incorrect progression. Those are your TVET rules. They are not appealable. Did not meet the 50% academic progression requirement. Yes, you may appeal that. You're able to provide to us the reasons why you were not able to pass, and if those reasons match the reasons why we can accept an appeal, we will then evaluate that. And then finally, of course, highest qualification level already achieved, that's your undergraduate qualification. We will not be able to fund you on that, and as a result, you can't appeal. And N+ rule exceeded. Yes, you can appeal that in certain instances, as long as you have not already reached a level of N+2. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Christine, for that thorough presentation. I think it will answer some of the questions, as you was mentioning that you were seeing some of them on the charts, that as you were able to answer them as well. All right, no, thank you so much. Without wasting time, I will also now hand over to Mr. Mukondeleli to speak to the allowances allocation and the NSFAS wallet, which maybe young people also might want to know how are the allowances allocated to them into their wallets, especially those ones who are currently students and who are currently being funded by NSFAS. Over to you, Mr. Mkondeleli. Mr. Mkondeleli, can you hear me?
Go on.
Thank you.
Hi,
Oh,
morning. Colleagues, I can hear you. I'm just struggling to share my screen. Just give me a sec.
no problem. You just press present and then we'll alert you once we can see your screen, sir.
Okay. I don't know if you can see it. Hi, can you see my screen?
Not yet, sir.
Do tell me if it's coming up.
I will do so, sir. Not yet.
Okay, maybe then while we are waiting for the screen to come up and for the sake of time, Kaya and Kirsten have already covered most of the important information. So what I'm only going to cover is the allowances. I believe Malika will touch on the NSFAS wallet. While we're waiting for the presentation, what do we do after the funding confirmation? We then update the funding status on the NSFAS portal, and on the side, we also share the funded lists with the institution. And we do this so that when students are admitted, then they are able to go straight to the universities and the TVET colleges for them to be able to register. So students should be aware that once you are approved for NSFAS funding, you are not required to pay for registration fee. NSFAS covers for registration fee. And then on top of that, Chairperson, is my screen
Yes, sir.
coming up?
Not yet, sir.
No, then something is not right. Maybe I'm doing something wrong. Please give me a sec. Just give me a sec.
Okay.
Okay. This is there. Okay. Let's try again. Let's see if it's coming up.
I think it's loading.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I was doing something wrong. This is a new platform. I'm not familiar with this platform.
No, it's okay, sir. We understand. You can go ahead. We can now see your screen.
Okay. So what we do after the funding, we will communicate the funding list with the institutions, and then the institutions will then register our students. And to the learners out there, it is important for you guys to make sure if you know you are funded and then anyone is asking you to make an upfront payment, please don't do that. Institutions, all the 76 institutions, 26 universities and 50 TVET colleges, they are well aware that once you are funded, they must register you without having to make an upfront payment. So once they register, institution will then be expected to submit what we call registration data. Registration data is more like submitting a claim to NSFAS, where on that claim, then they will be telling us how much is required for your tuition fee, for your allowances, meal allowance, and all the other allowances. So what I'm going to project, it's not going to take long. I'm only touching on the allowances. The screen I'm showing you, colleagues, is how university allowances is structured. So you will see allowance type. We always, our accommodation guide the allowance type that students are supposed to receive. So you will see that if you look at on the left side, it says accommodation type, university managed and catered. For these students, NSFAS will give them 5,200. That is for the learning material. Learning material, it can be for the books to support them during their studies. Living allowance. For living allowance, because this is a catered accommodation, it gets to be paid to the university for university to provide food for the students. And then these students will receive personal care allowance of 2,900 per annum, which if you are to divide it by 10 is 290 per month. And then accommodation, it's actual cost. We do cover accommodation, actual cost per annum. Then there's no travel allowance for this group of students. And then the second one is university managed self-catering. For this group of students, they will receive 5,200 learning material. They will also receive a living allowance, which is capped. The cap amount is 15,000 for the whole year. So if you take that figure, you divide it by 10, it means they will be receiving 1,500 per month. This, they can use it to buy food, to support them with whatever they need. There is no, actually the personal care is already part of the living allowance. It's part of the 15,000. So they won't be receiving a separate personal care. Accommodation, we will pay accommodation as per the claim we received from the institution. For this group of students, there is no travel allowance. And then the third group is living off campus in non-accredited accommodation or who made their own arrangements. This group of students, they will receive 5,200 for learning material. Living allowance is 15,000. Personal care, it's already included on the 15,000. And then for this group of students, there is no accommodation that we will be paying, but we will give these students sort of actual cost limited to 7,500. That is the travel allowance. So these are, you would find that this group will be staying at home. Then they're supposed to travel from home like daily. Those are the people who will then reside around the campus, so they can easily travel from home. And then the last group is private off-campus accredited accommodation. This group will receive 5,200, and then the living allowance of 15,000. Personal care, it's part of the 15,000. Accommodation, we will pay actual cost limited to university equivalent, open bracket, with lease agreement. In other words, we need lease agreement for this group of students. And then the next slide just talks to distance university. I know you'll find that some of the students are intending to register at UNISA, so distance student university. And as of 2023 academic year, students who are studying less than 60 credits towards their qualification qualify for the learning material allowance only. But distance students studying at equivalent full-time course load qualify for the personal care allowance of 2,900, which then goes back to the 290 that I spoke about. And this requires a student to be registered for a minimum of 120 course credit. In other words, you would find that first semester they are registered for 60 and the second semester 60. Then these students will qualify for this personal care allowance. So, Chairperson, that's what I wanted to share for now. I don't want to waste more of your time, but that's what I thought maybe it's important, since we are talking to the to students who are then applying for NSFAS. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mkondoleli. I think for the NSFAS wallet, we'll now hand over to Ms. Malikan to just take us
Good day,
through
Chair.
that. Good day,
Uh,
ma'am.
Thank you. So yes, I will be speaking just briefly through the NSFAS wallet solution. What is the NSFAS wallet? It is a mobile banking platform for which we create accounts for our students so that they are able to receive allowances from NSFAS and withdraw those allowances at registered merchants, depending on which institution you are studying at. At the moment, the NSFAS wallet solution is currently utilized at TVET colleges only, 44 out of the 50 colleges, for students funded for 2021 and 2022. Just to note that the NSFAS wallet solution is currently being decommissioned, and we are now in a closeout cool-off period where we are looking at the migration of students' current balances from the NSFAS wallet to the newly launched NSFAS card. Going forward, students will not receive their allowances through NSFAS wallet, as I mentioned, because it's being decommissioned. The students will start receiving their allowances through the NSFAS card, and it's very important during the onboarding processes at our institutions that students ensure that they are onboarded if they are funded for 2022. The allowance allocations for TVET colleges are determined by the colleges themselves in line with the DHET guidelines, and we would pay directly to the students accordingly. I think that is it, Chair, just on the NSFAS wallet side. Not much to cover. As stated, NSFAS wallet is in a closeout period at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much, Malika, um, for the explanation on the NSFAS wallet. We'll now hand over to Pranika to take us through those who have outstanding fees and the contract and how the payments are made by NSFAS for the students. Thank you. Over to you, Pranika.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, you could just let me know when you see my screen.
We'll do so, ma'am.
You still not seeing it?
Not yet.
Okay.
It's downloading. We can see it now, ma'am. You can go ahead.
Great, thank you, Chair. So it's very quick overview just to talk to NSFAS pre the 2018. Currently NSFAS is granting bursaries and we're not doing loan agreements any longer. There is still a bit of confusion, or I think amongst our students, that were pre 2018. So NSFAS is continuing with loan agreements or recovery of debt from debt that was incurred pre 2018. We are trying to raise awareness, so a platform like this actually would assist us in bringing that awareness out as well. We're trying to raise awareness in terms of paying back of previous loan agreements. We currently run this process through our internal team based in NSFAS, and those long paying or outstanding accounts are then handed over to our external debt collectors. So we have a panel of external debt collectors that if we then see that your account's outstanding with no payments, we would then do like SARS data matches. We then hand over. So lots of questions that we get is, why do I have to pay back this loan? I was part of the struggle. I fought for this. for free, and yet we are still burdened with this debt. Unfortunately, the current state of accounts or loans that were approved before fee-free education was announced are valid loan agreement forms entered into between NSFAS and the student at that time. And once a debtor, so all agreements, so all terms and conditions of that agreement signed between NSFAS and the student is valid and binding, and it has to be paid back. So fee-free is from 2018 onwards. It doesn't actually talk to accounts or loans that were granted prior to fee-free education. In saying this, the onus then falls on the debtor or the student from that time to then contact NSFAS when they are gainfully employed, to contact NSFAS to advise us of their employment details and any changes of their details. In most instances, we don't get updated details from the student directly. Um, and the information that we would have had at the time of them being a student is what stays on our database, and those are the information then to which we would be sending out the data statements. It is not it's not impactful in that way because the debt or the outstanding amount is not then brought to the debtor's attention. And that is solely because the debtor does not then engage or, with NSFAS and keep us updated. We do rely on getting SARS information from SARS. We are privy to this information in terms of the NSFAS Act, where we are now able to do confirmation with SARS to see if the debtor is now employed. However, the onus still falls back on the debtor in terms of notifying NSFAS of their employment, then contacting us in order to make payment arrangements. There are various methods to which payment arrangements can be made, and that is via a debit order, or payments can be made. It's via a debit order, direct deposits, a salary deduction, and employer deduction. And what each of these talk to is, should a debtor want to make an arrangement for payment, they can contact NSFAS via our collections mailbox. There's a collections@nasfas.org.za mailbox that the student will then contact us, send us an email, say that they either request their statement because they're not sure what their debt is currently standing at, and that they want to make arrangements for payments. They will then get an opportunity to decide whether they want to do this via a debit order, whether they would then prefer to then do direct deposits, or if they would want their employer to do these deductions for them. We would then, based on what their preference would be, we would forward the relevant forms to them, and they can then make those payment arrangements or payments towards their debt. The debt is valid. I mean, the interest is running on the accounts until settlement of the account. So debtors are expected to then contact us and make payments towards their debt. These loan agreements has not changed, or the contents or the obligation in terms of the loan agreements have not changed, even though we are in a fee-free education state now, currently. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you so much, Pranika. So, some of us and those who have utilized NSFAS funding before 2018 and they have signed the loan agreements, we are still indebted to NSFAS to pay. I think that's what it's clear on your presentation, Pranika. Thank you so much. And we must take acknowledgement and pay back NSFAS what is due to them, and as per the agreements that some of us might have signed, and we have benefited from NSFAS. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you.
From all the panel members, we will now get into the session of questions and answers. I believe that all the panel members the presenters who presented, they can see questions. I've been alerted by our technical team that all of you are able to see the questions on the chat. If I can just request that you colleagues, if you can answer some of the questions that you see, anyone that they see that it fits to what relates to their part in terms of what has been presented, and is reflecting on the chart. Anyone can just come in and answer some of the questions that are on the chart. So I will hand over to you to just start answering the questions. The first question that I see here, it says, I cancelled NSFAS, my application, and reapplied again. Is it going to affect my funding process? So if anyone can just answer that question from NSFAS.
Sorry, Chair, can you just repeat that? It's Kaya.
Ms. Tendima, it says I cancelled NSFAS and my application and reapplied again. Is it going to affect my funding process?
Okay, they canceled the application. They canceled NSFAS. Okay, I assume based on what you're saying that the student was funded by NSFAS and canceled
Yes.
the funding, and now they have reapplied again.
Mm.
No, it is not going to affect the funding, not unless the student had exceeded. There's something called N plus. N plus is the number of years a student is allowed to be at the university or at the college to be funded by NSFAS. If the student had exceeded N plus, then only then the student would be affected. But if the student is within the N plus, then the student would not be affected. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Ndima. And then the next question is that my application is on submitted, but when I click on the next steps, it turns orange. What is happening?
Okay, Chair, if I may come in, I think my boss Kirsten had answered that in her presentation, where she said that we are still busy building the back end of the system. Many students now that have applied, that you would find that their application would be on a submitted state or they would be on an awaiting evaluation state, mainly because we have not started within the back end. The ones that would have their funding decisions ready by now are those that are SASSA recipients only, because we are still waiting for the data from SARS in order for us to do the financial eligibility assessment. And we still need to ensure that the back end system, which is the evaluation process of application, is ready, and then we can start processing those applications. So you may find that applications would be on a submitted state, applications would be on a waiting evaluation state, except those that are not except those that are SASSA recipients, where they will see their applications being finalized.
Okay, Mr. Ndin, then does it mean that once then all the back end is sorted, will they get a notification?
Yes, they will
okay.
have to go onto my NSFAS and check. Like my
And
boss
check.
had said, she had then said that when they visit their profile, probably late December or early January, they would see a change in their status, because by then would have started processing the applications internally.
Okay, all right. So they must go to their NSFAS page. No, that's clear.
Yes.
Okay, all right. And then the next question is, my application is saying surname not matching. When I'm submitting my application, I don't know anymore. Angisazi. Mr. Ndima?
Okay, on that one, Chen, it happens in instances where there's a maiden surname. Let's say the mother of the applicant was married and now they are not married, or they got divorced, and then the Home Affairs data has got another surname, and then the student on the other hand has got a different surname. So that's when then we'll have to. That's when we we get to have those issues. But there is a way in which, when we are assisting students, we come up with a way to say the student must rather put in this the other surname, because there is another surname, but it then becomes a problem when they do not know the other surname which the mother had used previously, or that I think that's where the issue is. But I know our ICT team is working on a way to fix that, because in some instances you may find that an NSFAS representative is not there at the time to assist the student. Therefore, the student would end up being frustrated and leave the application without them having to put in the application through. So our ICT team is working on that so that we can deal with it as an exception internally.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Ndima. But it only want parent ID, not mine. What must happen next?
It wants the ID copy of the parent. Yes, that is correct. Why is that so? Remember, when the student creates a profile, the student would punch in his or her ID number. That ID number would then go to Home Affairs data, and we check if this is the student, if this is the person whom whom Home Affairs is also picking up on the other side. So we do check the student immediately when they create a profile. Now, when it gets to the application, we don't really need the applicant's ID copy. We need the parents' ID copies to be uploaded, because we have checked the student already with Home Affairs at the time at the time when they create a profile. Hence, it does not want their ID copies.
Okay, all right. Is it true NSFAS no longer funds B.Ed and LLB?
Chairperson?
Yes, sir.
Thanks. I have a suggestion which might help us to speed up responding to some of these questions. I would suggest that Kaya should then open the comments and go through some of these questions because I was doing the same. I noted few questions down. So while I'm talking to some of these questions, which then affect my space, then I would suggest that Kaya open the comments and then note down some of the questions so that when he comes in, he's able to answer more questions, because I'm just worried that when you raise a question, it takes a bit longer. I'm not sure if that's proper, Chairperson.
No, it's okay. Then he can jot them down. But then I think I will still then continue to read them from my side, and then he will be prepared by the time. He will have seen some of the questions. As I indicated earlier, that they are also from your side, they are visible, so you can be able to see them. And then, but I just want to read them out so that then as well, we make sure that we address them through. And then at by 12:30 we are going to close the session. So yeah.
Yes. The question you've raised, allow me to comment on make few comments. I will be answering some of the questions, and I'll also touch on the question you raised. Will that be
okay? That's fine.
Yeah.
That's fine, sir.
Okay. Thank you. Chairperson, there is a question about students who are saying they have been affected by code errors. All the qualification code errors must be referred to the universities, to the institutions. Institutions will then address it with the Department of Higher Education, because NSFAS funds qualifications as per the information we receive from the Department of Higher Education. So my advice is that go to the financial aid office, raise the issue. They will liaise with the department for this issue to be resolved. The next comment, does NSFAS fund students who failed matric but decide to register at a TVET college? Yes, NSFAS do fund such student. The next one, is it true that NSFAS does not fund B.Ed and LLB? No, it's not true. There was a communication, I think it was beginning of last year, indeed, that we released a communication. The issue was linked with the qualification codes. It has got nothing to do with NSFAS not funding the two qualifications. We do fund these qualifications. We were then saying to the institution, they must go to the department and update their qualification codes And this is because most of this B.Ed and LLB qualification had expired with the department, so they needed to renew the license to offer these qualifications. So we still fund these qualifications. What are the number of modules to be passed for NSFAS to continue to fund a student? For this year, 2022, the requirement was 50%, which for universities it was 50%. And then for TVET colleges, Malika, you will correct me if I'm wrong, I think it was 75% of the modules. But I know at the moment we are consulting with the stakeholders, the SRCs, and all the other stakeholders to see what can then be implemented for this year, for next year going forward. And again, maybe something that I should have mentioned earlier on when I was presenting is that the data or the allowances I shared, it's based on the 2022 allowances. We are currently consulting the stakeholders to see if they can be increased, if there's a need for increase. As I'm talking to you, I'm sitting at the University of Mpumalanga. We are sitting here with all the SRCs where we are engaging about so that we can put together the 2023 funding policy, which that issue will be discussed. Which then brings me to the next item. Someone indicated that 290 is not enough, but then you need to remember that the 290, it's for students who are not supposed to buy food because these students are staying in the catered accommodation. So in other words, they are receiving food daily, morning, afternoon, and supper. So that's why we are NSFAS agreed to give them this allowance. It's for 2022. Going forward, since I said we are busy consulting the SRCs at the moment, so that maybe we can review this figure. Do NSFAS beneficiaries had to reapply? At the moment, no, they don't really have to reapply. What we do as NSFAS, those who are funded in this year, as long as we received a claim from the institution, we will then migrate the funding to 2023. The only thing that needs to be done is that because we have put together a new system, the students need to go to the new system and create a profile, and our system will then migrate the data from the old system to the new system. What is going to happen if I don't have a registration fee before NSFAS approval? Colleagues, this is important. You need to make sure you apply on time. On time, I mean, I would suggest that make sure you submit your application now. It gives NSFAS more time to more time to evaluate your application. Comes January, by then we will have your funding status. The moment you delay until next year, that's when you will be faced with this problem. And unfortunately, if your funding status is not yet finalized, we are not in a position to say to the institution they should then register you. So please do submit your application now so that we can evaluate them. We have been asked to make upfront payments by some of the universities, and why? Once you are funded, you are not supposed to make upfront payments. If an institution is asking you that and then you know you are funded, I think you need to go to the financial aid office or also raise it with the SRC. The SRC will then understand it. They will help you to address the issue. Funding eligibility without admission, where if for 2022 and then your status says funding eligibility without admission and the institution hasn't uploaded the registration fee, it is important that you go to the financial aid office for them to upload the registration fee. So, Chairperson, those are some of the comments I wanted to make, informed by some of the questions raised on the charts. Thank you. Chairperson.
Thank you, Mr. Mkondoleli. From the team from NSFAS, is there other questions that you have noted and you would like to respond to? Anyone can just go ahead.
Chair, it's Kaya again. I think some of the questions that are being asked on the chat, it's mainly a concern that the application status does not change on the portal when they check, and I have raised that, and it was raised before by Kirsten as well, that we are still building, we are still trying to finalize the system internally in order for us to start processing these applications. Hence, they may see that the application status is not changing, but sooner the sooner we start working on the on these applications internally, then the status of the application will change. Then there was a question that says court order. When they put when they state that they've got legal guardians, then the system requires them to submit a court order. Please clarify. I think I have clarified it when I did my presentation with regards to the types of supporting documents that we need. Immediately when the applicant does not provide us with the biological parents as per Home Affairs, then we require the student to provide us with a court order or a legal guardianship or a non-SASA declaration form. So what we are doing as well on what is one of the enhancements on our system, where it says court order, we want to say court order slash legal guardianship slash non-SASA declaration form, so that the student cannot be confused, so that they know that they either submit court order, a legal guardianship as well, or a non-SASA declaration form in cases where students are saying they do not know their parents, which I already explained earlier to say the non-SASA declaration form must be filled in by a person, by an applicant, as well as the person whom you are claiming to be your legal guardian, as well as a school principal, a previous school principal, or a social worker. And then they will, if it's a social worker, there must be a practice number. If it's a school principal, there must be a signature as well as the school stamp. So everything is on that form, and those forms you can, and that form you can download on our website. And that only applies to a person who is over the age of 18. The ones who are below the age of 18, then they are required to submit a vulnerable form, a vulnerable declaration form. And then there is another question that says, do I need to reapply if I already have NSFAS? The answer is no. If you are funded for this year, 2022, all you need to do is to ensure that you pass your modules, and then you can be funded next year as a returning student. And then there was a question that talks of closed applications for 2022. Yes, we do have applications which we have closed. I think it's over 8,000 applications where we decided to close these applications. The students whom we have been communicating with to submit the outstanding supporting documents, and students are not submitting the correct supporting documents, and students instead are submitting affidavits. NSFAS does not accept affidavits for 2022 going forward. So those students whom then are submitting the incorrect information, we then said we have communicated with this student for several times, and then we decided as the entity to close those applications because we need to open for 2023. So we cannot be dealing with applications of 2022, whereas we have been communicating with students to submit the correct information and they are not submitting that. That is why we have closed the 2022 applications. 2023 applications not moving. I think I have explained that. Existing students can't find their profiles. Yes, that is correct. We have had that because what happened is that when we deployed the new My NSFAS system for students, we decommissioned the old portal. So what then is needed now for existing students is to create a new profile so that they can be able to access their old profile, which was on the system. Once they create the new profile, then they'll be able to access the old profile which they have used because we have decommissioned the old one. Thank you, Chair. I think those were the questions that I think they relate in my space. Thank you, Chair.
Chair, if I may have a moment to talk.
You can go ahead, ma'am.
Thanks, Gugu. Sorry, and I'm going to correct both Tilavali and Kaya in terms of their assertions that if you're currently funded, you don't need to reapply. If you look at the guidelines for NSFAS funding, there are two conditions under which you have to reapply. The first is if you are, for example, doing a certificate qualification in 2022 and you are expecting to achieve or obtain that certificate qualification, and at the end of 2022, you must reapply in order to get funding for your undergraduate qualification. The other condition is if you're currently studying in a TVET college and you want to move next year to a university, you need to reapply, and vice versa. So if you're studying at a university this year and you've decided actually next year you want to study at a TVET college, you must reapply. If you ever have a question about this, if you're ever unsure about this, my advice is always to rather reapply. That means that if there is any kind of condition which would have forced you to reapply, you have already reapplied, and so there's no problem at all. To the one question about my mom's surname is different from my surname, that shouldn't be a problem as long as your mom is registered as your mother on the DHA system. In terms of duplicate applications, yes, NSFAS has realized that in fact the system is allowing duplicate applications. Unfortunately, they are going to have to clear that out for us, our new service provider, and so they will clear that out for us. The applicant didn't indicate whether they tried to cancel. They should try to cancel one of those. It was the person that mentioned submitting documents with only one document with one and two with the other. Try to cancel the incorrect application. But if you can't, don't worry, our IT people are going to sort this out. In principle, from NSFAS's side, nothing, the fact that you've cancelled an application and reapplied should not have any impact on our decision-making process. In terms of the question about the 350K and the 122K, you'll notice from this year onwards, we test everybody against the 350,000 Rand criteria. And similarly, everybody is tested against an N+1 rule. There is no longer an N+2 rule. Sorry, also there was a question about, I've been studying for 5 years, but it wasn't funded by NSFAS. The N+ rule in universities does not relate to whether or not we funded you. The N+ rule indicates that you must achieve the qualification or obtain your qualification within N+1 years if you're not disabled, and N+2 years if you are, or if you are living with disabilities, regardless of whether or not NSFAS is funding you. In terms of the qualifications, any questions you've got around qualifications, if you look at our guidelines, we have a section called approved qualifications, and what we've inserted in there is how you can actually go to the National Qualifications Framework, which is managed by SAQA. So you can go to the SAQA website and you can actually go search for qualifications. And if you actually select the criteria that we've indicated there on that part of the document, you will actually be able to see all the qualifications that are approved for funding as registered on the NQF. So we are consistently aligning ourselves to the NQF. So make sure that you take a look there. In terms of the person who asked, will I get funded for a diploma after a certificate? It's a very important question. We will not fund you for two qualifications. If you've achieved one qualification, a certificate, if you're trying to register for another one, which has been banded as a certificate. So go to that approved qualifications section of the guidelines, go to the SAQA NQF website, make sure that the diploma that the institution wants you to register on or is allowing you to register on has not been banded as a certificate. But if all else fails, speak to the FAO, and if they don't know, they need to reach out to NSFAS and we'll give them clarity. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, colleagues. And I think we are now going to close the session. If possible, I'll just want from one of the colleagues maybe to share in terms of to the youth, in terms of how can they be able to access NSFAS, either through the call center or what are the numbers, and also the website information, if possible, from you colleagues, so that young people, if they have further questions or they require more details, they can be able to access NSFAS. Because we do also, as the NYDA, get young people saying that they are struggling to access the call center and or maybe if they sent through an email, they are not getting any responses. If you can just get those details so that we can also be able to share with them, and those who are currently in this webinar they can also be able to get that information. Thank you. Colleagues, anyone? Mr. Mkondeleni, Miss Christine, anyone? Oh, Mr. Ndima?
Sorry, I'm busy looking to see if I can copy and paste it into the comments for you. I'm not able to. Should we email it to you and then you can copy it onto the chat for this webinar, Gugu?
Okay, you are unable to put it on the private chat?
Oh, let me try that for you. Give me a second, Gugu.
All right. Okay, we will try and copy it from our side and share it with the candidate we've received it. Thank you so much, Ms. Christine, for that. Colleagues, without wasting further of the time, I had Mr. Mkondeleni let you having sessions with the universities, and we have taken extra 30 minutes to 20 minutes of your time. So we like to thank you, colleagues, for availing yourself to the National Youth Development Agency and for answering all the questions from the different participants that participated in this questions and session answer from NSFAS, and we really appreciate yourselves, colleagues, for availing yourself, and hopefully we'll continue to have this relationship going forward. And when NYDA wants to have any question, or when we receive any question from young people as well, you colleagues will be available to assist us with those. We'd like to just thank all of you for the presentation. They were really detailed and they were really helpful for us as well as the NYDA. And I think also the colleagues that works for the NYDA call center, which gets lots of questions, and for our social platforms, we get a lot of questions that relates to NSFAS. And also it was really beneficial also for our centers across the country, that then those who were able to join this session, they did get thorough information in terms, especially in terms of the current applications that are taking place for 2023. So I would like to thank everyone and everyone who joined today. Thank you so much for using your data, and we hope that you've gained information regarding NSFAS, and those who were not able to join, but you were part of this platform, so you'll be able to assist others as well across the country who wants to apply for NSFAS with some of the questions that they might have. And thank you so much, colleagues. We are going to end the session now. Yeah, so thank you so much. Thank you, everyone, and goodbye, and have a lovely day.
Thank you.
Thanks.